Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. Alright, I just wanted to give a quick channel plug and shout out to DC 420 LA. And that's Dave and Chella. And they do a show on Sundays at 420 Pacific time, 720 Eastern time. And today they had a great show. They had Pat Harris on. He's the Democratic challenger to Dianne Feinstein. And they covered a wide range of topics. It was a very enjoyable show, not a dull moment. And yeah, if you're... Oh yeah, and another thing they do, by the way, another thing that they are famous for to me, because I use these videos all the time, or it's like a reference to where I can find some videos, but they post a lot of news clips about things happening in the marijuana world. So yeah, go ahead and check them out, and definitely check into their Sunday show if you're interested in that kind of thing. I usually sit there and watch at least most of it. And now back to the story at hand. And what I can like call the most fascist appointment that Trump has put forth so far. We have a new appointment in the drug war. I guess that's the only thing I can see this as. So let's check this out. This is from Slate. We're reading Mark Joseph Stern. Not sure if I've read him before, but I don't really usually read Slate. Not really a big fan. But anyway, this article kind of like stood out as one of the ones that had a lot of good quotes and stuff in it. Basically a well-rounded smear against this guy. So Trump picked a mass incarceration advocate obsessed with black-on-black crime for a job-setting federal sentences. On Thursday, President Trump announced 4 nominees to the U.S. Sentencing Commission, the powerful agency that promulgates sentencing guidelines for federal courts. Trump nominated 3 federal judges to the 7-member board, as well as a man named Bill Otis, all of whom will require Senate confirmation. Otis' nomination marks one of the Trump administration's most aggressive moves against criminal justice reform, and all senators who have professed to care about the issue should vote against his nomination. A prominent pro-prosecution crusader, Otis passionately defends the same law and order policies that created our current crisis of mass incarceration. Yeah, he kind of looks like that guy. Yeah, that's that guy for sure. Otis worked as a federal prosecutor at the Justice Department for 25 years, though he never tried cases himself. He also served as a special counsel to President George H.W. Bush. So once again, Trump is sticking to his guns with hiring these like 80s era drug warrior people. He currently teaches one class at the Georgetown University Law Center and advocates incessantly for lengthy prison sentences. Otis vigorously supports mandatory minimum laws, particularly in drug sentencing, which he attributes without empirical evidence to the decline in crime rate. He sharply criticized then Attorney General Eric Holder for shifting away from mandatory minimums for nonviolent offenders, and praised Attorney General Jeff Sessions for shifting back to them. To avoid longer sentences, he wrote, criminals should, quote, consider quitting the smack business and getting a normal job like everyone else. In 2016, Otis lambasted President Barack Obama for commuting the sentences of many nonviolent drug offenders, calling his move over-the-top and extremism. Otis actually goes so far as to reject the notion that it's possible for drug offenders to be nonviolent, because addicts can die of overdoses. So like if a drug dealer sells you drugs and you overdose, then it's the drug dealer's fault? Not always. Prosecutors have increasingly used this theory to bring murder charges against the drug dealers, which is bullshit. He dismisses reformers as pro-criminal advocates who want to be nice to drug pushers by letting robe-wearing partisans impose more lenient sentences. And he supports life without parole for juveniles. Well, you know what I got to say about both of those points, but first let's go to this robe-wearing partisans. Well, you know, from what it sounds like, you're an authoritarian, fascist dictator type guy. You're into totalitarianism completely, it sounds like. So it sounds like you're partisan, only you're so partisan to the right. I mean, it's like we don't even have a party for that. We've never even seen it. I mean, even the Nazis are looking at some of the things this guy said, and they're like, damn, dude, tone it down a little bit. I mean, for real, he supports life without parole for juveniles. That's the ultimate, like, this is what's wrong with our so-called correctional facility, corrections system. It isn't a correction system. It's a punishment system. It's not a thing where, like, when someone gets out, we expect that they've done good and paid their dues and corrected their erroneous ways, and now they're going to be a good member of society, so we give them a job and let them get back and, you know, integrated into society. That's not how it works. Someone goes to prison, they come out like they just went to fucking school for crime to figure out how to do better at crime. Naturally, Otis also despises the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as intellectuals and academics who support its goals. And I, you know, don't really have a problem with the Black Lives Matter movement myself. If you look at the demands that they have, they basically are calling for an end to the violence. That's it. So how could anyone be against that? Well, because the smear merchants see a couple of things happen at a couple of protests and they blame Black Lives Matter movement on it. That's just not how it works, man. It's just that's how the FBI demonized the Black Panthers. That's how any leftist group that ever tries to get a foothold gets demonized. Sometimes it's through a thing called a agent provocateur, which what they'll do is they'll pretend like they're one of the left-wing protesters or whatever, and they'll do something to make it look like they did it, you know. And this technique has been used throughout the, you know, since I can remember looking into it, and especially since the civil rights era struggles and the Vietnam War protests, and then after that, whatever protests happened after that, and whatever might have turned into riots. And usually these things are because some cops got acquitted for killing a black man or beating a black man down in the street on videotape. So, whatever, man. Black Lives Matter is not a militant group. They're not fucking violent. When a riot breaks out in a protest, just because, even if the guy had a Black Lives Matter shirt on, that don't mean fucking Black Lives Matter is out there trying to promote that shit and push that shit. So whatever, I'm not, this video isn't really about that. But, of course, a right-wing authoritarian dickhead like this would totally ignore their bullet list of demands, which is basically like some reasonable policing that doesn't involve killing unarmed people. Yeah, of course this guy would hate them. And he calls them America Stinks crowd. The America Stinks crowd. And, you know, I get that. You know, you hear a lot of leftists when they're doing their protests and stuff, burning flags and talking about, you know, not respecting the military because of the fucking 8 interventions that we're in, where we're bombing people in 8 different countries and nobody even seems to fucking care or talk about it. I mean, these are people getting bombed, guys. And when it comes to drone bombs, 90% of them are hitting not the right targets, hitting civilian targets. So if you want to talk about America Stinks crowd, you can't lump Black Lives Matter into that just because you're like, oh, yeah, you guys are bad. You guys are with the America Stinks crowd. You don't respect America. You don't respect the cops or the troops or any of this shit. And it's just this right-wing versus left-wing, basically, like, thing that goes on forever and ever. And to be quite honest, man, if you want to know my opinion on all this, I don't know. I mean, I'm watching this fucking series called Flint Town right now, and I just live right outside of Flint. And yeah, America fucking sucks, dude. Are you kidding me? Right now, the cops are basically like an invasive force, an occupying army in these cities. And they treat people less than human, less than dog in some cases. Do they have a hard job and is it dangerous? Yeah. But what I'm seeing is a lot of fucking just over-the-top cops being cowards. So, you know, you can say what you want about the leftist protests and Black Lives Matter saying what they want. They have a valid complaint. The cops shoot over 1,000 people a year, unarmed most of the time. How many black men get shot a year, or unarmed black people, or whatever you want to say about that statistics? It's a pretty good percentage of that. We'll say 20 to 30% of that is black people. Is there something going on there? Well, fuck yeah. It's like 20% of the population ain't, you know, out there just doing crazy shit to try to get shot, let alone 20% of the people that get shot are black. All right, so anyway, let's read that again. He calls them the America Stinks crowd and blames them in part for a present era of cultural rot impersonating advanced thinking. I would argue that that's what you are steeped with, man, but whatever. In 2017, Otis asserted that black-on-black violence, an ugly everyday occurrence in American cities, wreaks far more damage than police abuses. And when I watch the Flint Town series, and when I'm listening to this guy talking about this shit, what I'm seeing really is a reaction to the poverty situation. You know, we've divested in the fucking in America. All these corporations that call America their home and want to get all these tax breaks from Uncle Sam and shit. They basically fucking decimated this country. They went into places like Flint and Detroit and all these other cities in the Rust Belt. They built these fucking factories. They polluted the shit out of everything and destroyed the land. They got the city populations condensed into really dense populations, and then they took off. And they shipped out the fucking jobs, and they left the economies of these places completely broken. Just totally decimated the whole fucking country like this. And all these communities, black communities. So, you know, and the reaction is put more police, put more militarized police, make the police more thuggish. Because, you know, there's no economy, so the only thing left for people to do is sell drugs and do crime, right? What else are you going to do to make money? I don't understand what people are expecting out of people in the inner cities that have been totally decimated by the corporations just leaving. They've divested in America by shipping all the good jobs out. And they always give you this excuse about the jobs. Oh, you know, the jobs out there now are these high skilled, you know, you got to go to college and go to special training to get these jobs now. No, that's just a fucking bullshit excuse as to why they can ship jobs overseas. Because they're telling you, oh, we don't need you anymore. We need you to be smarter and get a more technical degree so you can get a better job. I got news for you, dude. There ain't those jobs aren't around either, especially not in places like Flint. Anyway, he goes on to say, while such abuses must be honestly confronted and curbed using all the tools of the law, reality is what it is. By far, the major source of misery in black communities is violent crime, much of it driven by drug gangs. And like I said, what's that got to do with? That's because the economies of these places you got no choice. As soon as you come up for air, you realize there's no jobs, and you look around and the people that are doing good are selling drugs. That's what it is like. So it's all about the economy, man. This guy's got it just the opposite. Like, oh, these drugs came in and that's all people are doing. They don't want to go get jobs. They don't want to go get jobs. They're so conditioned to the fact that they can't have good jobs and there is no jobs anywhere near there that, you know, what's generations later, like this is the 2018. I mean, I grew up around Flint back in like the 90s, the early 90s. I come out of high school in 1990. And there was nothing then. And we've gone through, 28 years of people graduating from high school since then? And there still ain't shit. There still ain't no economy there worth a fuck. So what do you expect all these people to be doing right now? Besides trying to fucking make a living. We're not going to succeed in suppressing that violence by hectoring or handcuffing the police. Instead, we're simply going to accelerate the devastating crime trends of the last 24 months. I don't know what he's talking about there, but whatever. Otis also gave a partial defense of the arrest of Eric Garner in 2014. Selling Lucy's is such a fucking crime. And the defense of the arrest, I didn't notice him getting arrested. All I noticed was getting him fucking murdered right on the street. Otis pilloried George Will for questioning police officers' decision to... And George Will, remember, George Will is like a really highly conservative talker that usually talks on Fox News or weekend shows. Anyway, Otis basically, whatever pilloried is, him for questioning police officers' decision to arrest Garner for illegally selling loose cigarettes. Now, if that was what the whole incident was over, which it was, that is some bullshit, and no fucking way should you put someone in a chokehold for doing some misdemeanor ass shit like that. He pointed out that Gardner was violating New York's tax law and wrote that neither such taxes nor criminal penalties for evading them have previously been thought to be the hallmark of despotism. No, not at all, dude. Not until you start killing people for fucking breaking them laws. That's the very definition of it, you fucking idiot. It's perfectly reasonable, he explained, that the government will use force to implement criminal law. Yeah, we know that. That's the whole fucking problem. And that kind of policing does not make the violence and the crime go away. It doesn't do it. It certainly doesn't do it. Although Otis endorses punitively long sentences for most offenders, violent and nonviolent, he has at times taken a softer stance, as in the Scooter Libby case. A former advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney, Libby was convicted of perjury, obstruction of justice, and making false statement for his role in the Valerie Plame affair, in which, by the way, in case you don't know what the Valerie Plame affair is, that is when Scooter Libby dropped a news piece when him and Dick Cheney decided to out Valerie Plame's husband as a... Or no. I'm sorry. Valerie Plame's husband was an ambassador, and he was doing this thing where he investigated the story about these aluminum tubes and this yellow cake uranium that they were ramping up to try to go to war with Saddam with, weapons of mass destruction bullshit. And his wife, Valerie Plame, happened to be a CIA agent, and they basically outed her in the newspaper in an op-ed section. So Scooter Libby took the fall for that shit, even though it was a Dick Cheney plot. And yeah, that shit is fucking highly shitty, corrupt, espionage type fucking, outing a CIA agent in the field, who she said later on that several people, who knows how many, were compromised because of that, and and murdered, quite frankly, taken out, or whatever. And so what does this guy think of all that? A federal judge sentenced Libby to 30 months in prison, which is basically a slap on the hand for that kind of shit. That's like treasonous type shit. Not really treason. I don't like to throw that word around lightly, because that didn't have nothing to do with the enemies, but I mean, when you're dealing with outing CIA agents, who knows what the fuck kind of dangerous shit you're getting into. And he also got 2 years probation and $250,000 fine. Big slaps on the hand for a guy like Scooter Libby. Otis wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post arguing that his punishment was excessive. Oh, neither vindication of the rule of law nor any other aspect of public interest requires that Libby go to prison. Oh, really? A breach of trust. You people on the right, you always, say how someone like Snowden's a fucking traitor. Snowden's not a traitor. Nothing he did hurt anybody except for the crooks that want to spy on us. So whatever, man. The Scooter Libby was a dirty scumbag for what he did. And of course he deserved 2 years probation, or probably more than like 2 years in prison or something. I don't know. Otis wrote, adding that Libby thought he was serving his country by committing perjury and obstruction. A sense of proportionality, he concluded, argues in favor of eliminating Libby's prison term. President George W. Bush wound up doing exactly that while leaving the rest of his sentence intact. Of course. Everybody knew it was going to happen, too. Otis has also written that Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into the collusion between Trump and Russia is politically tainted, and I would have to agree with him on this, unfortunately. So yeah, you're right. It is some serious bullshit. This part right here, collusion between Trump and Russia. So right now what we're dealing with on that front, not that I really care about talking about it, but, collusion between Trump and Russia, what? Can someone please explain that to me? Because we found out about these 13 hackers or whatever. They weren't hackers. They were 13 trolls. It was a troll farm for a marketing company in St. Petersburg, which is a bunch of Russians that made some fucking shitty memes that really couldn't possibly influence anybody to not vote or vote for anybody, quite frankly. So were they colluding? Were they do they have a direct connection with Trump, and did they work for the Russian government? Absolutely fucking not. They had nothing to do with Trump, and they weren't Russian government. They were a marketing company. So I don't know what the fuck this Robert Mueller investigation is all about, but I am kind of glad that it is netting a bunch of people for corruption, because that's what I like to see, is corruption getting fucking called out and people going to jail for being corrupt pieces of shit or losing their job or whatever. Now, all that aside, he accuses the New York Times of habitually lying against Donald Trump. I agree with him on that one too. And I agree with all kinds of the reason why people are opposing Trump completely the wrong way. You don't oppose Trump by complaining about his tweets or his bad hairdo or whatever the fuck. You go after his policies, and you don't vote for his policies. So all the people that act like, oh, Trump, he's terrible, he's awful, and they talk all this shit about Trump and call him a fucking fascist and dictator and all this shit. To me, Trump isn't doing anything on his own. He's just doing the fucking awful, deeply conservative, Paul Ryan style Republican shit that they've always wanted to do. Trump is just a stooge in this. As far as that goes, the Democrats are right there voting for all this shit. So they're not opposing shit. But yeah, are they lying about Trump all the time? Maybe. Are they exaggerating shit that ain't really something? Yeah, a lot. And is this Russian-Trump collusion shit anything? No, it isn't, man. But I'm glad to see the corruption getting uncovered in it. It's easy to see why Trump's administration settled on Otis for the Sentencing Commission. He'll be able to advocate for the draconian punishments that Trump and Sessions have championed. Indeed, Otis is already well practiced at framing narratives in a manner that aligns neatly with the administration's position. On the same day that his nomination was announced, Otis published a blog titled The Staggering Cost of Leniency, in which he blames the Parkland, Florida shooting on the soft policies I've spent years opposing. He views the massacre not as a result of lax gun laws, but as the costly leniency demanded by the soft and softer crowds. I think everybody's wrong on all this Florida Parkland shooting shit. It doesn't have anything to do with the lax gun laws. It has to do with the guy shouldn't have, been able to have a gun if he was getting fucking cops called on him on a regular basis, violent, acting up in school, threatening people, all that kind of shit. You basically work a deal out where you get his guns and take them away until he gets... I don't know. I don't know the answer there. Is it to do with the laws themselves? I don't know. People always talk about mental ill. situations, and then you go into Big Pharma. Well, is Big Pharma the answer to the mentally ill situation? A lot of the people are already on fucking meds, psych meds that do these shootings. Like the Colorado theater guy. Basically almost every fucking school shooter there ever was. And most of the mass shooters were either on some kind of psych meds or they were off of them. Go figure. So whatever, like, we got to do better somehow. I don't know what it is, but it definitely isn't what this guy's saying. The cost of leniency demanded by the soft and softer crowd? Are you saying that because people know that they're not going to get nothing but a slap on the wrist, then it's okay to go shoot up a school? Like, I don't even understand what the fuck he means here. How in the... what? It doesn't make any sense. It makes more sense for someone to say, oh, we should have some gun laws to restrict people that are crazy from being able to buy a gun. People that have violent incidences where the cops come more than once for, you know, shit that gets violent then maybe we should figure out a way to get rid of that guy's guns. A lot of the times these mass shooters have a history of violence. It's not every time, and I will say that when it comes to mental problems, a lot of people aren't diagnosed. A lot of people don't even have mental problems. They just fucking crack. You know? That happens too, and it happens a lot. A lot of times these people would have just, back in the day, just committed suicide. So maybe there is a case to be made about not having fucking the capacity of 30 round clips and as fast as you can pull the trigger. You know, people always talk about, oh, assault rifles, this and that. It's a fucking 30 round clip, and it's a round that can go through you. So it is pretty fucking deadly, man. If you're arguing that an assault rifle is just a rifle, that's cool. I'll agree with you, but it's fucking deadly as fuck. I know my hunting rifle has a 5-shot chamber that you have to put the bullets in every time you run out. I'm not saying that we could get rid of the banana clips again like we did when Reagan wanted us to, but whatever, man. I'm not going to insert myself into that debate anymore. All right. I used to do it back in the day. I don't really care. I'm kind of like, I like to have my guns, but I can't because the NRA don't give a fuck about me because I have medical marijuana. So, I mean, it's kind of a slap in the face. So I'm not really a big fan of the fucking NRA, in case you haven't seen my videos. So all this shit comes down to what? The Sentencing Commission's guidelines aren't binding, but all federal judges take them into consideration, and most follow them quite closely. And that's another thing that was, like, the Holder memo gave them more leniency in that regard. Like, if you were a 2-3 strike person, you know, if it was your second or third federal felony, the judge basically really had his hands tied. And he would be frowned upon if he didn't give you some kind of a mandatory sentence. And these numbers on the sentence were also lowered on those guidelines. So if you did go with the sentence recommendations that are in these stiffer sentence guidelines that this guy promulgates, you had the fucking leniency to go lower than the actual number that's on there. Which, you know, within reason, I'm sure. But I mean, this is all giving the judges more discretion, which is a fair thing to do. And basically what it does is make it so when it is a nonviolent drug offender, and it is because it's like the third or fourth felony and it's just possession, then the judge don't have to throw you in fucking prison for 20 or 30 years. Seems like it's fair. But to this guy, that's not cool. He don't like any of that. He don't want the judges to have any powers at all like that. If he sees something come across his desk and it says third felony, possession of crack, rubber stamp him 20 years, out the door. Or whatever it is. I don't even know. Judges who don't comply with the guidelines are much more likely to have their sentences reversed on appeal. That's true. If confirmed, Otis will have significant influence over the rules that determine how long federal offenders must languish behind bars. In recent years, the Commission has shortened sentences with the goal of reducing federal prison populations. But Otis is just the man to keep those prisons at maximum capacity. And with Jeff Sessions doing something soon with his drug war ambitions, like I said, man, buckle up, guys. We're in the doorway of the darkest era of the drug war. That's what we're at, man. That's where we're at. And with that, I'm going to leave you. Once again, don't forget to swing on over to DC 420 LA on YouTube. I will drop a link to the channel in the description. And I hope the best for our future as far as the country itself, because yeah, it's a shit show. It's a mess, and this guy here and this hard stance on the drugs, the drug war, handling the drug war like it's some kind of a war, and just basically it is a war against the people. It isn't a war against drugs. They're not going anywhere. They are not going anywhere, man. They're always going to be here. The government's bringing them in, for one thing. So, yeah, man. Good luck with this. This guy's probably, they brought him in so that when it comes time to lay out the sentencing, guidelines for doctors that overprescribe, or patients that doctor shop, or whatever they call it, people that get caught with selling legally marijuana in Colorado, then this guy right here is there to make sure that you get the most years you possibly can from the federal government, because that's going to somehow make everything better. All right, I'm out.